I'm headed down to Acapulco. I know I'm headed down to Acapulco with the long white sands where I might have a chance. Yeah, we're gonna head down to Acapulco.
Join me in welcoming Rick Falkvinge. Rick, good to have you.
Thank you so much, Jerry. Thank you so much. How are you doing? How are you doing, guys? It's great to be here. Do you have a bit of feedback on the mic here? No, we're good. So I'm going to talk about how to turn an idea into a tactical advantage. Ideas are good, ideologies are good, but at the end, change comes down to execution. And I'm Falkvinge on Twitter. I love seeing my name on Twitter, so if I say something witty, if I say something brilliant, if I say something stupid, go ahead and quote me. I love seeing my name on Twitter. And I'm actually going to do one thing I forgot, which is turn this machine toward me so I can see what slide you guys are seeing. There you go. So how many in this room have heard of the Swedish Pirate Party before? Let's see a show of hands. So yeah, I'd say that's about 2/3. And a funny thing here is that number is so consistent across the world, no matter where I'm presenting. So I actually dare put it in the slides. So just for kicks then, how many in this room have heard of any other Swedish political party? Let's see a show of hands. Yeah. So this is kind of funny. And this tells you something about building ideas and building something for the future, yeah? So a brief introduction for those of you who have not heard of us. We love the net, we love copying and sharing, and we love civil liberties. As a consequence of that, some vested interests called us pirates. Probably an attempt to make us bow our head in shame. That didn't work too well. Instead, we stood tall about it. I founded a new political party. I led it for the first 5 years, and it turned out to be the biggest party in the most coveted youth demographic. We did that on less than 1% of the competition's budget. And this is how the tactical advantage comes in. They had 6 million euros between them. We had 50,000, and we beat them. That gives us a tactical advantage of over 2 orders of magnitude. And I'm going to show you that secret sauce here today. It's about developing swarm methodologies. And they can be applied to almost any business or social cause. Well, almost any. There is a small asterisk there, and I'll get to that. So, today's entertainment. We've been elected to various levels. I mean, we're in the European Parliament, we're in the Icelandic Parliament, we're in a number of regional parliaments, and we're in tons of local councils. We've been acting in about 70 countries, and what's interesting coming up next is that in Iceland, we're actually polling at 42% at present, making it look like we're going to have the next prime ministry on Iceland. Now, you shouldn't pop open the champagne until the results are in, but the funny thing here is that with information, there are no borders. The internet doesn't know borders. It only takes one safe data haven in the world to make all the dominoes come down. And we are fucking winning. So today's entertainment, actually, I keep forgetting this. I keep forgetting about all my nice rewards. So for doing this, some people named me IT Person of the Year. That was the Swedish IT industry. A magazine named Foreign Policy named me a top 100 global thinker. And Time magazine nominated me as one of the world's 100 most influential people across all categories. That's kind of humbling, but it still comes down to execution. So here's today's entertainment, finally. We're going to look at a bit of new values that are actually kind of old, and why aren't they carrying through? My personal journey, how voluntarism gives you a tactical advantage, how translating this ideology of ours into execution can make you drop kick those old stale bastards who pretend to have our power. A little bit about leadership, how people want to be part of change, how they want to be included into something bigger. and how to optimize that organization. So, what were we talking about in the Pirate Party? We were talking about how all these analog values were being lost in transition to digital. How fundamental liberties, both in terms of the legal term and the plain language term, are being eroded and lost in a collusion between vested industries and a more or less corrupt government. And to illustrate that, let's take a look at the letter. I mean, it's got a very significant seal on it in its characteristic picture, yeah? That seal means something. It's used to mean something. And that letter has certain characteristics to it. First of all, the letter is anonymous. You and you alone determine if you identify yourself as sender. On the inside of the letter, on the outside of the envelope for the world to see, or not at all. That's your prerogative, end of story. The letter is secret in transit. If you were in East Germany, the Stasi would open letters. In the rest of the world, they were supposed not to open letters. Nobody would dream of opening a letter just to see if it contained a copied drawing. And yet, here we are today. It was untracked in transit. Nobody had the right, nor indeed the capability, to map constantly who was communicating with whom and try to draw conclusions from that. And last but not least, the mailman was never responsible for the contents of a sealed letter. The messenger immunity dates back to the Roman Empire and has been absolutely crucial for the development of a courier service and messenger service in the first place, that you don't have liability for a carried message. All of these 4 characteristics are under assault by vested interests. And my message, our message from the Pirate Party, was that it's entirely reasonable that our children have the same rights in the environment they communicate in as our parents had in the environment they communicated in. That is not rocket science, folks. And when I say this, the copyright industry in particular goes ballistic and stays there. They say, you can't possibly say that anybody should be able to send anything to anybody anonymously. We wouldn't be able to make a profit. So fucking what? These rights are on completely different levels. These rights should carry on to our children and entirely regardless of whether somebody can no longer profit. An entrepreneur's role in society is to make money given the current constraints of technology and society. They do not get to dismantle civil liberties in collusion with a corrupt government, even if they can make money otherwise. Thank you, guys. I knew I'd feel at home here. So this is our key message. And my personal journey to the eye of the tornado here was that I set up a seriously ugly web page. I mean, it was ugly. And now we've got people in parliaments and a president in 70 countries. So I basically had the entrepreneur's insight, right? Yeah. This sucks. Fuck, I can do this better. Well, obviously not the look of the website, but still. So I posted a manifesto that was kind of wild, to be honest, as in part of it was that our Minister of Justice should not have any public office except selling hot dogs outside of Parliament. That way we know he at least can't make any damage. It had more political points than that, but that was like part of it. And I just wrote 2 lines in a chat channel. Hey, look, the Pirate Party has its website up now after New Year's. This was on January 1st. And the address, that was it, and it just detonated. When I came home from work the next day, I had 300 activists waiting for me, just wanting to be part of this, holding out their hands to me. Rick, give me something to do. I want to be part of this. Give me something to do. And it's like, how do you organize those? How do you organize 300 people while you still have their attention? And that's where swarm methodologies come in. That's where self-organization comes in. That's where voluntarism comes in. And I realized this was my change to change the world for the better. I had a high-paying IT job at the time, so I went to the bank, I took out a loan, and I quit my job. In that order, very important. When the bank asked me what I wanted to do with all the money, I said, a project. I probably shouldn't be more specific than that. And I decided to go for it. I decided to change the world. Eventually, I did run out of money, to be honest. I thought we could fix this on the very first election. We didn't. We did well, but not good enough. So I lived off of donations for 18 months. I was very honest with the Pirate Party following, say that, guys, if you want me to do this full time, please deposit $10 to my bank account every month as a recurring donation. And enough people lived that so I could put food on my plate and roof over my head while doing this full time. And while this was called shameless begging by the tabloids, obviously, in retrospect, I don't think I've ever had a more honest job. As in having a more gratifying delivery, as in these are people who are donating just so I can keep doing what I'm doing. That was very, very humbling. And obviously, sometime during these 18 months when we kept growing, I did numbers of TV interviews. One of them was, what would you like to say to our Minister of Justice? And my response was kind of prepared at that point. A hot dog with extra mustard, please. And the TV crew went, huh? Then came the European elections of 2009. 3.5 years after founding, we became the largest party for people under 30. We had 25% of those votes, which was an absolute sensation. We were a technology party, so our gender balance somewhat mirrored the a typical technical course at university. Among first-time male voters, we had 38%. That blew the establishment out of the water. Completely blew it out of the water. And we did that on less than 1% of their budget. This was followed by successes all over Europe. Next was Berlin in 2011, and then followed pretty much in a lot of places. We were called the fastest growing political movement. Now we're in a bit of growth pains, but that's part of what happens. There is always a phase when you feel like you're treading water in terms of just following through. But the world is run by those who show up and keep showing up. So how do you create this tactical advantage? How do you turn this idea into this 2 orders of magnitude of cost efficiency advantage? It turns out you use purebred anarchy instead of hierarchy. You put your ideas into practice. You practice voluntarism. The Swarm organization is not a bunch of full-time employees. It's tens of thousands of volunteers. And there's a Futurama quote here. I like Futurama. When push comes to shove, you gotta do what you love, even when it's not a good idea. I mean, what kind of full-time idiot thinks they can change the world by starting a new political party? So the basic idea here is very, very simple. It's much harder to execute it, but the very basic premise is super straightforward. You're creating an environment where individuals get leverage for their efforts. If somebody would, say, promote anarchy or hardcore libertarianism and get 1x output, you're providing an environment where they get 1.25x output. So it becomes in their interest to do it through your organization rather than as a standalone agent. You give people more output per effort. So let's just pull a number out of thin air here and imagine that we might want 40,000 work hours per week once this organization is scaled up, yeah? The traditional hierarchy, statist model would be that we would hire 1,000 full-time employees, also known as a shitload of expensive. The Swarm model, where you incentivize independent agents to work with you on a voluntary basis, means that you might have 20,000 volunteers instead, who work 2 hours per week. That comes to the same amount of work made for the organization. And the key is organizing these 20,000 people. Now, everybody wins here. Volunteers get a better effort, get a better output for their effort, which they would have made anyway. And your win, obviously, is you don't have to pay anybody. You need to pay a couple of ongoing expenses, maybe, like a phone line or something like, oh, thank you so much, sir. A phone line or something like that. Cold water, I needed that. Very perceptive, thank you. You don't have to pay these volunteers anything because they are doing it of their own volition. This is what anarchy is about. This is what volunteering is about. So everybody wins. And this is how the swarm organization gets 100 times cost efficiency advantage. So how do you launch a swarm? You announce your goal, like I did. But that goal can't be anything. It needs to have 4 specific characteristics to it. That goal needs to be tangible. There, 4 criteria. Tangible, credible, inclusive, and epic. Tangible. The goal must be clearly defined. We are going to accomplish exactly this. It needs to be binary. A lot of organizations are founded with a premise like, we're all like gonna feel good, man. And while feeling good is arguably preferential to the opposite, it's not a tangible goal, yeah? It's got to be credible. When somebody sees this goal, you need to have posted a way to get from where we are to where we want to be that makes everybody realize that, yes, this is actually achievable. This is achievable. It needs to be inclusive. When people see this project plan, they need to immediately realize, like, there, that is my spot. I want to be there in this project. And they need to be able to jump right in without asking anybody about it. And finally, it needs to be epic. Shoot for the moon. You're not going to create 20,000 volunteers rallying to creating the 3rd best accounting software. Shoot for the moon. Actually, don't shoot for the moon. You know why? We've been there already. It's not epic anymore. Shoot for Mars. Well, Mars is the only planet inhabited only by robots, so technically we haven't been there yet, but yeah. So the key here is don't fear obstacles, fear the dark. If you can execute something like a project, if you can plan something like a project, you can execute it like a project. All right, so we're going to Mars. We need 24 volunteer rocket scientists, probably 12 metallurgists, somebody crazy enough to mix hypergolic fuel in their backyard. But as soon as you've listed the resources you need, you can get them. If you can plan it like a project, you can execute it like a project, and you can make tens of thousands of people join into this. And that encourages the emergence of swarm intelligence. So how do you optimize this organization once you have the goal down? You optimize it for 3 factors. You optimize it for speed, trust, and scalability. And behind these 3 words are speed. You remove decision bottlenecks. You take yourself out of the loop. Decisions should not depend on your availability. Your role here is to provide the guiding star. This is our goal. This is how far we've come. This is what we're doing. This is who we are. Decisions are made as decentralized as possible. We had something called a 3-person rule, meaning that if 3 activists agreed that something was good for the organization and the goal, they had the green light to just go ahead and act in the organization's name, including spending resources. Including spending resources. And if you talk to MBAs about that, they say you're absolutely clinically insane, like you can't trust people to that degree. You know what? I led this organization for 5 years with 50,000 people. It was not abused once. It turns out when you look people in the eye, give them the keys to the castle, and say, I trust you, they fucking step up to the plate. And there's something to learn there. However, a lesson was that you have to re-teach people what authority means. Because a lot of people confuse this. We're 3 people, so we can make any decision. No, you cannot. Your authority here is empowering yourselves. You do not have the right to disempower others. As anarchists and voluntarists, we understand this difference. Most people don't. You have the right and the authority to create authority for yourself. You do not have the authority to remove that right from other people. That was complex. And expect mistakes. I mean, you're blazing a trail here, yeah? That means nobody has done this before you. That means that in order to find the right way, you must try what works and what doesn't. You've got to work by trial and error. And you got to communicate this, that we expect things to go wrong. We expect ourselves to learn as we go. And when you realize that even the biggest, richest organizations fuck up, that's when you relax and realize that, okay, maybe there's a point where beyond which you don't need more control. My favorite here is the Swedish hospital landlord, or healthcare landlord, locum. Locum. Latin name meaning location. Pretty good name for landlord. Their logo looks like this, just their name in lowercase. And they were kind of seen as harsh, brutish, cold company, so they tried to reverse this image of themselves, yeah? So in a Christmas ad campaign, they took their logo, replaced the O in their logo with a big red heart, and plastered it all over Swedish media. I'm not making this up. You can find the ad immediately just by looking at locum advertising. So what you're optimizing here is iteration speed. If you need to try something 15 times in order to learn it, optimize the time it takes for each iteration, and the quicker you'll get to your goal. Trust, encourage diversity. Your colleagues need to translate your vision because they have a social context you don't. One size does not fit all. This is MBA talk. In reality, we're all people in different social contexts, and your role is to provide the guiding star. Your colleagues, your tens of thousands of colleagues, need to translate that guiding star into their social context. This leads to different approaches tried in parallel, because you don't know initially which works and which doesn't. This is why democracy sucks in this context, because it means that 51% gets to say what 49% cannot try. Here, it may turn out that 2% of the social contexts were key to succeeding, and you don't know that in advance. You want the different approaches tried in parallel. So you need all the different people to translate your message into their worlds. This means that people become aware of diversity. This means that I have no idea what the guys over there are doing, but I know we're all in the same boat, so I trust them to work for the same thing I'm doing. Scalability, finally. Get feet on the ground. Start out with yourself and sort of think of empty boxes at continent level, country level, county level, city level, with functions, and start filling it out as you go. If you're building a scaffolding, geographic scaffolding that supports the swarm, this means that eventually you'll have local people that just curious people can walk up to and ask about this initiative. And that creates a scalability. That creates this beautiful merger between online and offline activism, where people can actually meet other interesting people and form this social bond. Because an organization is not its organizational chart. An organization consists only of relations between people. So once you create this decentralized organization with small responsibilities for each and every body, this swarm intelligence emerges. And it's beautiful to watch. Everybody is constantly making small initiatives, completely without your green lighting, or indeed often awareness, that move small steps toward the goal. And when 20,000 people do this, week over week, that's when you're getting into Parliament in 3.5 years instead of 28. You have a cost efficiency advantage of 2 orders of magnitude. That's your reward for using anarchy instead of hierarchy. So do you want to change the world? Maybe you want to bring clean water to 1 billion people. Teach 3 billion people to read. Like the last speaker here, maybe you want to create a new free state of liberty. Maybe you want to take humanity to Mars. This is about leadership. This is about standing up saying, I'm going to do this. Who's with me? And just allowing people to join you. Because whether you believe you can or cannot change the world, you're probably right. You're probably right. Change doesn't just happen. Somebody makes it happen. And the one key thing I want everybody to bring out of this presentation is the question, do you want to be that person? Do you want to be that person? Oh, one last thing. Going all Steve Jobs on you here. One last thing. Fun. Fun in a swarm is more than enjoying your time at work, because people, it is a requirement for success. People are attracted to other people who are having fun. People gravitate to fun. In contrast, they'll take detours around people infighting. So having fun is a requirement. And it's not a bad requirement to have for success, is it? So in summary, your goal is tangible, credible, inclusive, and epic. The organization is optimized for speed, trust, and scalability. You have a voluntarism as a culture and fun. And that'll give you 2 orders of advantage, 2 orders of magnitude of cost efficiency advantage. If you want to know more, you can download this book for free in this QR code. Thank y'all.
I wanna dance by water beneath the Mexican sky. Drink some margaritas by swinging blue lights.
By the 21st century, the statists had taken over the world. After 9/11, the savage union of the war on terror and the war on drugs squelched the last flickers of freedom. Central banking-backed wars raged. Violence, imprisonment, and theft had become the norm. Not many could see any other way. Hope vanished. But then, when things looked their darkest, something happened. A surprise, and just in time. From the valleys, fjords, and suburbs rose the anarchists. From the cities, factories, and the dark web came the anarcho-capitalists. And from every other nook, corner, cranny, and drum circle, the voluntarists. Some said it was too little, too late. The war had already been lost. You can't change the system, they cried. And the anarchist answered, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. One rule to heal the world, one rule that binds them, one rule sets their moral compass and aligns them. The N-A-motherfucking-P. And with that, they gather again, as they do every year, in Acapulco, Mexico, this coming February for the 3rd annual Anarchapulco. Speakers include Larkin Rose, Jeffrey Tucker, Jeff Berwick, Adam Kokesh, Milo Yiannopoulos, Lauren Southern, Luke Radowski, Julia Toriansky, Roger Ver, Rick Falkvinge, Dana Martin, Judd Weiss, Max Egan, Josie Wales, That Guy T, Anarchy Girl, Sasha Daygame, Barry Cooper, Mark Victor, Trace Mayer, Ian Freeman and Mark Edge, Rosalind Ross, Tim Moen, Dan Dix, Dale Brown, Christopher David, Stephanie Murphy, Derek J. Freeman, Derek Brose, and many, many more. The headline musical act will be Eric July and Backwards. In and around the event will also be the Dollar Vigilantes Internationalization and Investment Summit, Change Media University, and the world's largest ayahuasca ceremony held by Barry Cooper, Ayahuascapulco. Plus, Terry Brock's Fund Your Freedom entrepreneurial course, Adam Kokesh's homesteading workshop, Sasha Daygame's Anarchy in Relationships course, Dana Martin's Free Your Family workshop, and much, much more. And it will all be held the last week of February 2017 in Acapulco, Mexico at the 5-star Mundo Imperial Resort and Convention Center. Go to anarchapulco.com to stake your place in history. The world might just never be the same. Evacuate the state. Brave the future.